breaking news here on Donald Trump's potential VP. You know, he's been dropping hints, he himself, that is, Donald Trump, here and there. I do believe he did this big town hall the other night with my old employer, Fox, and Brett and Martha. They asked him a little bit about this, and he said, you know what? I know exactly who I'm going to pick. Watch.
Who would be in the running for vice president?
Well, I can't tell you that, really. I mean, I know who it's going to be.
Give us a hint.
We'll do another show sometime.
Well, what about any of the people who you've run against? Would you be open to mending fences with any of them?
I will. I've already started to like Kristi better.
Kristi having just dropped out of the race, of course. So we just got a little bit of intel from none other than Dr. Ben Carson, because he was flat out asked, hey, has the president contacted you, sir, about being vice president? And, you know, this is what you got to love about Carson. He's so not like a politician in this way. It's actually, this would be a very interesting pairing, shall we say, because, you know, Donald Trump is not like a politician in any way. And then you got Ben Carson, who is not exactly, you know, hey, look at me, right? Like a lot of typical politicians. So this would be a very interesting comment. I'm just saying. So Ben Carson, Dr. Carson, brilliant man, strong conservative, has been very aligned with Trump all along. He was asked, hey, has the former president, talked to you about this at all? I want you to see his response, and we can talk about it. Here we go.
This is also one of the reasons President Trump is doing so well in the polls. Has President Trump contacted you to be his VP?
I don't want to talk about what we've talked about, but we've talked about what can we do to save this country, and that we will work together to make sure that America remains America. There's so many things that are going on right now. You know, compromising the DOJ, using it to injure your opponents politically. These are things that occur in China and Russia and Cuba. Those are not things that are supposed to occur in this country. Yeah. And we should be alarmed, and I think the American people are alarmed.
Do you see more support from the black community for President Trump?
Absolutely. I used to go to places and be the only black face. Not anymore, not by a long shot. And I think people are starting to recognize that the Trump administration was on the side of black America.
Wow. So very interesting thing that he said there. Like I said, you know what, Ben Carson, he's not going to like sit there and lie to your face. So he was in a little bit of a situation there. It's like you can say, you can't say, just so that we can add on to this. You know, we can talk about Tucker, we can talk about Kari, we're going to talk about Tim Scott and all these other people, Byron Donalds. But listen to what Donald Trump also said when one of the Fox people followed up and said, hey, you know, you told us that you already knew who you wanted for VP. So can you give us any more hints? And Trump kind of tried to shut him down a little bit. This is relevant when you think about the potential for Ben Carson getting the gig versus, say, I don't know, like a Tucker or a Kari Lake or somebody who's going to be just, you know, Vivek. Of course, I know a lot of you guys like him. I see that in some of your comments. When you think about some of those bigger personalities versus, say, Ben Carson or even Tim Scott, and there are others, the Neom, right, the governor out there in the Dakotas. Let's take a look here at Donald Trump explaining what he kind of envisions there on the VP front.
You said in our town hall that you had an idea, or you might have already decided about your VP pick. When do you think you're going to make that?
Well, it's never really had that much of an effect on an election, which is an amazing thing. Both election and primary, it's never really had much of an effect. Right? I may or may not release something over the next couple of months. There's no rush to that. It won't have any impact at all. The person that I think I like is a very good person, pretty standard. I think people won't be that surprised. But I would say there's probably a 25% chance it would be that person.
Is Senator Tim Scott on the list now?
No, he's a great guy. You know, he endorsed me. There's an example. Nikki comes from South Carolina. Tim Scott, is from South Carolina. But if you look, the governor, great governor, another senator, Lindsey, we happen to like Lindsey, but Henry McMaster knows her very well. He endorsed me. It's very hard for a governor to endorse somebody when you have, Henry McMaster was the lieutenant governor under her, and he endorsed me, and he's going to be here tonight. In 15 minutes, you're going to be watching him speak.
Really interesting pivot there. If you look at Donald Trump, brilliantly done, actually. So Brett Baer's like, hey, what about the VP? And he's sort of like, yeah, it's really not that big a deal. And he's right. He's totally right. It is so not a big deal. Like the VP, it's just interesting, ladies and gentlemen, because we kind of know who's going to be the top of the ticket anyway. I mean, unless, we got a Democrat plant thing going on with Nikki that we don't even fully comprehend yet. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Donald Trump. He's already ruled out Ron DeSantis. He's ruled out Nikki Haley in terms of being on the ticket with him. And as he said, like once you say those things and you rule them out, it's kind of hard to go back on that word. So Tim Scott, he had very nice things to say about him. Ben Carson, we know he likes Ben Carson very, very much. Another person that they've talked about from time to time, that would be none other than the guy who used to have the show opposite me on the Fox News, right? I was on the Fox Business Network, 8 o'clock every night. Tucker Carlson, who would be, in my estimation, a fascinating show. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think that Tucker actually said it really well when he was asked about this by none other than Roseanne Barr. He went on her podcast and, she lets it all out. She's like, hey, what do you think? Like, are you thinking about it? It's kind of cool, right? They're possibly looking at you for VP. Here's Tucker's response.
First of all, on the crazy train there, how do you feel about Trump saying he would consider you for vice president?
Gosh, I don't know. I put that in the category of asteroids striking the Earth, good or bad. It's so far outside of my control that I'm flattered.
Yeah, it is flattering, isn't it?
For sure. But it's hard to, I've never been in politics.
Would you ever do it?
Would I accept?
Yeah, if you really asked
think about that. I spent my whole life looking at politicians and commenting on them and passing judgment on them. And I've never run for, room mother. And so the idea of that is so far from anything I've ever done. It's kind of hard even to imagine.
What do you think?
I certainly support Trump. I'll tell you that. And I can tell you, I've always agreed with Trump's policies, always. And I lost friends over it. And I've never actively supported anybody because it's not my job to actively support people. I watch, I like to watch. But I'm a voyeur.
Yeah.
But I became an active Trump supporter when they raided Mar-a-Lago last summer, the summer of 2022. That can't stand.
No, that can't.
And I agree with Trump on a lot. But even if I disagreed with Trump on a lot, I'd still be a Trump supporter because you cannot allow that. You cannot allow the regime, the president of the United States, to use the Justice Department to knock the front runner out of the race. You can't do that.
It sure feels like that, right? We're going to get to that in just a moment because I have details to bring you in terms of some of the lawfare, quote unquote, that's going on. But Tucker Carlson saying it really well there, ladies and gentlemen. Kind of, hey, I'm flattered, but it's not what I do. And I think he was being very truthful when he said that. Again, I think he'd be great. I think he'd be fantastic. I think he understands the media in enormous, vast ways, much like Donald Trump does. And I think he's got a head for policy. But I think it's very different, right? And again, I say this myself. You're on one side of the aisle. To cross over and to be on that other side is a very surreal kind of thing. And I think he gets that. He gets it. So I don't think it's going to be Tucker. I hear that Melania Trump likes him, I'm sure, because he has a sophistication with the media. She wants to protect her husband. And I think he'd come in really handy. He'd help the country, I'm sure. But again, like think about this realistically. If you're Donald Trump and if you're Tucker Carlson, do you really want that? Tucker's got a great thing going. He just started his own show. He's going to be very, very successful. I have no doubt. And he's never been room mother. And then Donald Trump, let's face it, guys, like he's a big personality. The reason why up until, they eventually had a very big falling apart. The reason why Mike Pence and Donald Trump worked so well together was one was willing to play that second fiddle. And you need that dynamic. You need that person who's like, okay, you're the quarterback and I'm your tight end. I'm sure that's bad for a sport analogy because my sport analogies are just in general really bad. Don't count on me for that. I can tell you about Taylor Swift and why they think she's politically important, but I can't tell you much about the game. But you know my point. What I'm trying to say is it's a lot to have these two big personalities